The night I entered the palace to be made a consort, the young general knelt outside the gates until he wept blood. Inside the curtained bed, the Prince Regent held me in a deadly embrace, refusing to let go. Everyone thought I was nothing but a songbird trapped in a powerful minister's hand. They didn't know I was the fallen ruler of a ruined kingdom, returned for revenge. This was a game of chess. I used myself as bait and drove two men who held the world in their hands into madness over me, and I rode that madness straight to the throne. Chapter 1. The day I was granted the title of consort, he knelt outside the palace all night, and I, with Prince Regent Alexander, spent a warm night behind hibiscus curtains. Right now, Alexander had me in his arms. Through a layer of gauze, I listened as a guard reported. Prince Regent, General Gabriel is still kneeling outside. He says the princess consort is a runaway house servant from his residence. Alexander lowered his head, his narrow, phoenix eyes fixed on me. Is that true? The upward lilt at the end made it clear he was displeased, but Gabriel was useful to me. I couldn't let them clash head-on right now. While I was still weighing my words, the satisfaction on Alexander's handsome face hardened into cold indifference. So while you were away from me, you went and provoked another man as well? One hand tipped my chin up. The other tightened around my waist, pulling me flush against him. The hold made me uneasy. I shifted, but he only gripped tighter. So I lowered my eyes and answered obediently. When you were hunting me down, I had to survive. I hid among the border troops and once received his protection. Later, I returned to the capital with him and stayed at the general's residence for a while. In other words, I had no choice. His expression eased a little. His palm brushed my cheek, his voice gentle and aching. I made you suffer. From now on, I'll make it up to you twice over. If a man with a face like his, power-mad Prince Regent and all, tells you he'll treat you well, wouldn't you be moved? I didn't dare move at all. He wasn't ordinary. He was the kind of man who could sell out his own family for power. He was also the enemy who poisoned my imperial father, slaughtered my entire clan, and drove me into exile, never safe for a single day. Compensation from a usurper? I want nothing from him except his life. But first, I had to stay alive. As long as the Green Hills remain, there will be firewood to burn. Go tell Gabriel, Alexander ordered coolly. The woman in my arms is a treasure I can't bear to let go. How could she be some lowly servant from his little Pingyuan general's household? More like he can't wait to kill me. If I hadn't escaped, if the world hadn't learned that royal blood still lived, he wouldn't be stuck wearing the title of Prince Regent. The guard left. Soon he returned, bringing Gabriel's unyielding reply. General Gabriel says whether she is his household servant can only be decided after he verifies it in person. I nearly choked on blood. Where had I found such a flawless, pig-headed ally? Why was he rushing to die? Sure enough, Alexander flared. He's gone too far. Bring me my sword. He started to rise. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. Let me go. Don't be angry. He just earned military merit. If you kill him for no reason at the palace gate, it will stain your name. I'll go. I'll make sure he never comes to bother us again. Before I could finish, he sealed my mouth with a kiss. The air thinned. I quickly went weak. Only then did he say, satisfied, go. When I arrived, Gabriel had his red-tasseled spear braced crosswise, ready to force his way through the palace gate. He wore a dark robe threaded with gold. His black hair was bound beneath a jade crown. He stood tall, refined, striking. He was known as the jade-faced Yama. Even among the eunuchs, his face was almost too clean, too elegant for this world. But the moment he saw me, his pale face turned green. Gabby, you really? Gabby was the nickname he'd given me when I hid my identity and stayed by his side. Really what? I glanced down at myself. Beneath my outer robe, my mandarin duck undergarment showed. So did my snow-white skin, and the red mark scattered across it. It was frankly too revealing, too suggestive. Anyone looking would draw conclusions. So Alexander had sent me dressed like this on purpose. A warning. I thought it over and decided to add fuel to the fire. I flashed a dazzling smile, curled a finger, and beckoned him closer. Hatred was already rising in his eyes. Before I was your house servant, I had another identity. I was Princess Qingping of the Yuchou dynasty. I returned to the capital to take the throne back from the Prince Regent. If you're afraid to die, get lost now. Gabriel stared at me, stunned. He'd never imagined the wild girl he'd picked up by the roadside was a princess of the Yusho dynasty. More importantly, this princess was special, because I wasn't only the dynasty's sole royal heir. I was also the crown princess the late emperor personally named while he still lived. I was the kind of princess who could inherit the throne. That was why Alexander had been so desperate to hunt me down. After he failed, he hurried to marry me. I met Gabriel while I was fleeing. The first time I saw him, he was in battle. Silver armor, dark robes, a long spear, a face like carved jade. He charged at the very front. Everything about him stirred my heart. Of course, what moved me most was this. He came from nothing. He'd fought his way up from the border troops on his own strength. In the capital, he had no backing. So I arranged to meet him. I stayed close, day after day, until his feelings began to shift. Before returning to the capital, I clung to him and pledged my life. Because I knew that once I showed myself in the capital, Alexander would do anything to drag me back to his side. After all, the hatred of having one's wife taken is as unforgivable as the hatred of a murdered father. But Gabriel, the fool, how could he come alone to storm the palace and demand a woman from the all-powerful Prince Regent? I knew he was fierce, and still I feared he couldn't fight so many. If he died on the spot, everything I'd planned would be wasted. Fine. Protecting him now was protecting myself. First, I had to scare him off. I didn't know whether my hint was obvious enough, whether Gabriel would understand. He turned and walked away without even looking at me. Somehow it stung. But after a few steps, he came back. His eyes were red as he asked, "Gabby, I only have one question. Are you here willingly? When I returned from West Camp, my household said you went out to buy vegetables. I went to Market Street, and the people there said you were taken." He was good, too honest. Was this really the time to dig all the way to the bottom? I glanced at the eunuchs surrounding us. Sky blue robes, black boots, embroidered blades. They were dressed like the secret agents of the imperial factory. The sabers in their hands weren't the deadliest part. It was the bone-piercing crossbows hidden in their sleeves. They used to be my imperial father's agents, gathering intelligence. Now they were Alexander's claws. If I dared to say no, and Gabriel flew into a rage over a woman. Whether he could save me would be another matter. His life would be forfeit. Even if he didn't die on the spot, the imperial factory's agents would soon frame him, throw him into prison, and torture him until they grew bored. So I waved a hand helplessly. He said he would take responsibility for me and marry me. Don't say anything else. You know me. I've always loved money and craved power. The wind was strong last night. You knelt all night, General Gabriel. Hurry back, wash up, and sleep. He froze, then said, "Fine. Very fine. I understand. Just wait." He looked like someone who thought I'd climbed a higher branch, and that he'd settle accounts later. Well, look at that. He'd learned sarcasm. When I returned to the room, Alexander was still waiting. He held a scroll, half reclining on a couch. His inner robe hung open, spring spilling everywhere. Elegant brows, fine eyes, a touch of red on his lips. When I entered, he glanced at me from the side. "Why were you gone so long?" I stopped and said nothing. There was no need. His people had been there the whole time. He seemed to ask only in passing. After speaking, he set the scroll down and patted the empty space beside him. "Come here." He looked as if he wasn't finished. He might have leisure, but I'd run out of patience. Especially after making my young general suffer. I turned, took my clothes, and sat at the vanity. Facing the bronze mirror, I smiled sweetly at him. "You should go to court, Prince Regent. Don't give those censors another excuse to write that you're ruining the nation for beauty." Whether they cursed him didn't matter. But before my identity was made public, I couldn't afford that charge. Those civil officials looked frail, but when they went mad, they were terrifying. When my imperial father fell gravely ill, Alexander led the civil officials in a struggle for power against the imperial factory agents led by the eunuchs. Back then, the civil officials even beat someone to death in open court. People will do anything for profit. In the past, they swarmed to praise Alexander because they wanted a share. Now they cursed him because he held all power and trampled their territory. "What are you thinking about, princess? Don't put those on. They're dirty. I've had new clothes prepared." Alexander caught the edge of my garment and leaned in, hauling me into his arms. You used to wear nothing but fine robes and eat nothing but delicacies. Now that you're with me, you'll have everything, no worse than before." His large hand caught my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. His thumb brushed my lips lightly. "Smile for me, princess, like you used to. A smile that reaches your eyes and your heart, not that professional, fake smile. That was too much to ask. Back then, my imperial father loved me, and everyone around me respected me, loved me, protected me. Now I was only a puppet in his hand. The day I lost my value, he could kill me in an instant. How could it ever be the same?" I forced my emotions down, slipped my arms around his neck, and looked up with a sweet smile. "I don't want to be a princess you hold in your palm anymore. I only want to be your princess consort, held in your arms and cherished like this. When will we hold the wedding?" Last night he promised he would marry me soon. While my imperial father lived, he had arranged a betrothal between us. After that hidden coup, Alexander's smooth rise to regency and control of the state likely owed much to his status as the imperial son-in-law-to-be. His ambition was vast, but if he married me now, many opposing voices would fall silent. It was a fair trade, because the title of Princess Consort of the Prince Regent was, for now, worth more than Princess Qingping. In struggles for power, you have to stand in the brightest place, so even if Alexander hadn't sent men to seize me, I would have found a way back to his side. My words pleased him. He smiled broadly. "Soon. Yesterday, I already ordered the Ministry of Rites and the Imperial Astronomical Bureau to choose an auspicious day. We'll marry after making offerings at the Imperial Ancestral Temple." Offerings at the Imperial Ancestral Temple? Only an emperor's wedding required offerings at the Imperial Ancestral Temple. He meant to raise me as empress. I stared at him, wide-eyed with shock. Either he was a fool, or he trusted his power far too much. "Yes, you heard right." As he kissed me, he tugged open my collar. "It won't be you marrying me to become my princess consort. It will be me marrying you, becoming your imperial consort." Then he lifted me into his arms. I was so happy that when I faced him again with nothing between us, the humiliation from yesterday was gone. I had to admit, Alexander was a man of rare beauty. When pleasure rippled like soft waves across a spring lake, I couldn't help tightening my arms around his waist and smiling in silence. "Alexander, you're so good that I almost can't bear to take your life." The enmity between Alexander and me, and between our two families, goes back to the founding of the Yuzhou dynasty. 50 years ago, the world was in chaos. My grandfather, the founding emperor, was born a commoner. His family had farmed for generations. 8 generations back, they were all honest, dirt-poor peasants. But harsh rule is fiercer than a tiger. By my grandfather's generation, some in the family starved, others died of illness. He was the only one left, forced into the army. With a handsome face and a simple, foolish sort of temperament, people said that when he was a private, while others charged at the front, he stayed behind picking up dropped rations. He won the heart of the daughter of the greatest leader in his camp. In one leap, he became a young general commanding thousands. Later, luck favored him again and again. He rose quickly through the army and eventually split the realm 3 ways with Northseal and Annan. Perhaps he used up all his luck building his rise. After he ascended the throne, his bloodline was painfully thin. He had 3 sons, yet only my imperial father lived to adulthood. And because he valued loyalty, he handed out titles lavishly to many nobles of other surnames. Among them was the Song clan, Alexander's family. Later, with the connection of the founding emperor's successor Empress Jade, the Song clan's young men received favor and promotion without end. After decades of cultivation by the great peace years of my imperial father's reign, the Song clan had spread like a thick forest. Their power blazed like the midday sun. The bloated Song clan reached again for the position of empress. In the 8th year of great peace, my mother was on her way to the royal temple to pray. She was struck by a band of roaming thieves. After a difficult labor that brought me into the world, she died. My imperial father and my mother had been childhood sweethearts. After marriage, he cherished only her. The inner palace was empty. Heirs were few. That directly caused the standoff between powerful ministers and the imperial house. The Shen imperial clan was weak beyond measure. After my mother died, memorials urging my imperial father to fill the harem and appoint a new empress flew to his desk like snowflakes each day. The loudest call was to make a Song daughter empress. But my imperial father swore that until he uncovered the truth behind my mother's death, he would never remarry. That investigation took 10 long years. In the 11th year, on the eve of my birthday, my imperial father suddenly issued an edict. He would choose a study companion for me from among the sons of noble houses. By Yuzhou law, only princes could have 3 to 5 study companions. Princesses could only have playmates. That edict made his intent clear. He would pass the throne to me, and the chosen companion would one day help me rule this vast realm as its second master. Alexander and I met under these circumstances, though only as background because he wasn't among the candidates. Looking back, it was karma, in a way, because I had meant to use him. At first, he didn't bear the surname Shen. He was a Song. He wasn't named Alexander either. He was called Ethan. The name Alexander came later, after he rose to power. My imperial father bestowed it on him, hoping he would remember the favor I'd shown him and serve me well. If my imperial father knew what he later did, he would likely be furious enough to crawl out of his grave. After all, keeping Alexander was my idea. But giving him power and using him to eliminate the Song clan, that was my imperial father's doing. When the edict to select my companion was announced, every household in the capital with a young man was eager to compete. Alexander wasn't among them, because he was a thoroughly neglected child of the Song clan. I was supposed to sit through the selection from start to finish, but everyone on the grounds was too familiar. I'd grown sick of their daily flattery. I'd already decided that no matter who was chosen, I would find a way to drive him away. Naturally, I had no interest in watching those boys put on their affected performances. So when the palace attendants weren't paying attention, I slipped away from my seat, planning to go feed the fish in the imperial garden pond. Instead, I ran into a richly dressed woman dripping with pearls and jade. She was beating a thin, frail boy with a rattan cane. That boy was the man who would become Alexander. The woman snarled, "If your younger brother Felix weren't unwell, would it be your turn for the martial test? You two are about the same build. If you can win the martial test and help Felix get chosen, that's glory for the Song family, and glory for you. You're letting Ethan take his place because the martial test involves blades without eyes, and you're afraid Felix might be hurt," he said, pinned down by 2 servants as he lifted his head and stared at her coldly. "Don't call me concubine." The woman slapped him hard across the face. "Bastard. Your mother's been dead for years. Now I'm the mistress of the Song residence." The slap was heavy. Half his cheek swelled, and blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. "You killed my mother. Don't think I don't know. Even if I die today, I will not win that glory for your son." It was early summer. The sun was bright. I wore cicada wing gauze tribute from the Shu region and still felt stifled. Yet Alexander wore a padded jacket. His whole body seemed to hold no warmth at all. The cold light in his eyes was frightening. I had to admit it. He was stubborn, and in an instant, he caught my interest. Seeing Lady Song still looked ready to strike someone, I gave a quiet cough. Surely she'd remember this was the imperial courtyard and rein herself in. Sure enough, she flung out a vicious parting shot. "Then just wait for your father to cast you out of the Song clan," and swept away. Alexander looked over at me. Confusion flickered in his dark eyes, then eased into relief. I walked up and offered him my handkerchief. "Go wash your face and tidy yourself up. Being discourteous before the emperor is a serious offense." He froze for a beat, took the handkerchief, and headed for the pond. He wasn't obsequious, and he wasn't arrogant either. Far more interesting than the people who smeared flattery all over their faces the moment they saw me. I followed after him. "You don't dare join the martial contest. Does that mean you're not very good? Perfect. I don't like it when people go easy on me. I want someone who can't beat me and who'll listen to me, to keep me company." Meaning, I don't like anyone in that arena. You don't matter much in the Song household anyway. You might as well follow me, and I'll make sure you live well. I'd said enough. Whether he understood was up to him. He didn't answer. He only glanced at the jade tally at my waist. His bright eyes shifted as he said, "Thank you for your guidance, Princess." Oh, he understood. Interesting. I studied him. He was handsome, and he was clever. Exactly the sort I wanted, someone to run wild with me, inside the palace and out. I nodded at him. Go. After he left, I slipped back again in secret. The archery and riding assessment was held at the Imperial training grounds. First came the Imperial decree. The message was simple: friendship first, competition second. Anyone who played dirty would be punished without mercy. Then the sons of noble houses rode out in perfect formation atop tall horses. When my gaze swept over Alexander, I saw he'd changed into the standard-fitted uniform, a bright red brocade robe, black bracers. Against his fair, delicate face, those cool, clear eyes made him look even more unworldly. He was too handsome. I was halfway through a yawn when I stopped cold, stunned for a long moment. Only when he urged his horse into the royal hunting grounds did I come back to myself. At the attendant's shout, the fences swung open and startled deer scattered in all directions. 8 young nobles knocked arrows and drew, thud, 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 rapid and hard, and a swath of deer dropped across the field. Only Alexander, arrow on the string, did not loose. He kept pace with a newborn fawn nosing beneath its mother, searching for milk. Not only did he show no intention of shooting, he seemed to be deliberately shielding them. Someone noticed and jeered, calling him a coward. They rode circles around him, hunting for an angle to shoot the fawn. If I didn't step in now, someone would pull a dirty trick on him. So I pointed at Alexander and called out to my father, the emperor, "Father, I want him as my study companion." Then I ran down. The boys dismounted. Alexander seized the moment and gathered the fawn into his arms. I caught his sleeve and said to my father, "Don't you always teach me to keep kindness in my heart? My study companion will be a key minister who assists me in the future. Someone who can't bear to hurt even a fawn is the best choice." Then I swept my eyes over the other boys and said, unhurriedly, "They're better suited to be my guards. That fits the path of civil governance and martial strength you always speak of." Meaning, I was reminding my father to be cautious in choosing my husband. These boys were all too ambitious, gifted in both letters and arms, backed by powerful families. Wouldn't I be restrained by them in the future? My father looked thoughtful. The boys and their parents and clansmen went pale. Lady Song was even more shaken. She'd only meant for Alexander to fill in for her own son in this part of the assessment. She hadn't expected me to choose someone on the spot. Now her son not only lost the chance to become my favored man, he might even be accused of deceiving the emperor. My father asked Alexander, grim-faced, "Whose child are you?" Alexander immediately prostrated himself. "My father is Minister Song of the Ministry of Personnel." "And do you know what today's contest means?" "I do, but my mother died when I was young. I know the pain of a child who loses his mother. I truly couldn't bring myself to strike." This boy really knew how to press where it hurt. In one move, he tied his own background to mine. I had to admit, putting on a show with a smart person was effortless. Sure enough, Father Emperor's gaze followed his words. It landed on the deer pierced by arrows, lying in pools of blood. After a long silence, he said to me, "Come up here first." I knew what he was hesitating over. The Song clan was already too powerful. They couldn't be given more glory. That was why he wanted to choose me a husband from a family with vast power, to counterbalance the Songs. And he'd already learned that my mother's death was directly tied to the Song clan. There was no way he'd feel safe with a Song child at my side. But I was satisfied with Alexander Shen. His Song blood wasn't the key. The key was that he wasn't favored, and he carried resentment. As long as the Song clan still stood, he wouldn't join hands with them. Once they fell, he'd have no maternal clan to prop him up. That would be easiest of all. I quietly told Alexander Shen to stay close, then lifted my skirt and walked back. When I reached Father Emperor, I leaned in and spoke solemnly into his ear. "Father Emperor, I know you don't want a Song as my study companion, but he won't be a Song much longer. His mother was killed, and his father wants to drive him out." Father Emperor's eyes shifted. He asked, "You're Ethan Song, the Song family's eldest son, 15 this year?" Alexander Shen lowered his eyes and answered respectfully, "Yes, you're." He caught himself and said, "Yes." He knew there was nothing in the realm that could be hidden from the man before him. 15, Father Emperor said lightly. A bit too thin for his age. "Minister Song, don't you agree?" He turned with a smile toward Minister Song. Minister Song's forehead immediately beaded with sweat. He dropped to his knees. He grew too fast. I neglected it. Father Emperor didn't tell him to rise. He turned back to Alexander Shen. Since the princess likes you, stay by her side. Stay by my side, not as my study companion, just as company. Because it was the princess who liked him, not because he'd been chosen. But it was enough. Standing in the brightest place with his intelligence, he'd have more than enough leverage to deal with a domineering Madame Song. I wanted to shelter him. I'd wanted that from the first moment I saw him. I just didn't expect what he wanted would be higher than the sky and wider than the sea. I reached out my hand to him and ended up placing my whole self into his grasp. The next day, the edict came down. Father Emperor personally selected Benjamin Zhao, the only son of Censor Zhao, to be my study companion. Benjamin had been among the candidates, but he claimed illness and missed the martial exam that day. I knew why. It wasn't just that the Zhao family needed him to carry on the line. More importantly, he'd been frail since childhood. He was suited to be a civil official. The role of an empress consort to a female ruler was too much pressure. He might work himself to death. But when fortune arrives, you can't block it. Once the edict was issued, his family could only weep and accept. They bathed him, they tidied him up, and sent him into the palace. As for the 8 boys who had fought fiercely in the martial exam, they became my guards. I had to admit, Father Emperor's move was brilliant. It set a balance between civil and military factions that would support me. The civil side didn't have many people, only Benjamin Zhao. But his family's power was strong enough. Benjamin's paternal clan was a line of civil officials, known for upright integrity across generations. His mother came from a military family. His maternal grandfather was Nathan Liu, the famed Marquis of Might who guarded our borders. The 8 guards were clearly being shaped into future military officers. Later, the obedient and loyal could remain at court. The restless ones could be sent to the frontier. Perfect. But we all overlooked one person, Alexander Shen, who was given no position at all. Father Emperor didn't assign him deliberately, so I kept him in my quarters. As a man, he did the work of an inner attendant. Every day at first light, he accompanied me to morning lessons. I studied Confucian texts indoors while he stood outside in sun and wind. After breakfast, I went with Benjamin Zhao to lectures, learning how to govern. During that time, Alexander Shen went back to tend my deer. Yes, my deer. The same fawn we'd saved that day. In the afternoon, he came to fetch me after class. After a brief rest, when Father Emperor finished the day's state affairs, I had to go to Qingming Hall to receive instruction and learn imperial statecraft. For a long time, Alexander Shen trailed behind me like that, moving from place to place. Like an old nanny, he managed my food, my lodging, and my outings. And now and then, petty trouble found him. He'd received the honor of being my personal attendant, and plenty in the palace envied him. He never told me any of it. I had no way to know. All I could do was snap back sharply whenever someone spoke ill of him. Soon rumors spread in secret. They said he used his pretty face to make the future mistress of the realm dizzy with infatuation. It only worsened the exclusion, feeding a vicious cycle. His ambition and hunger were probably planted in that time. I knew nothing. I only thought he was still worried about family matters. So I asked Father Emperor for a favor and got permission for him to return to his residence to pay respects to his mother. I assumed that now he belonged at my side, his concubine aunt wouldn't dare trouble him again. I was wrong. That woman was bold enough to throw him out. She even tossed his mother's memorial tablet out with him. She pointed at his face and cursed, "Filthy thing, a fine young man, doing a eunuch's work. Get out with your dead mother, and don't come back to disgrace the Song family." When Alexander Shen returned, there was an angry gash on his forehead. His mother's memorial tablet had done it. He brought the tablet back to the palace, wrapped in his sleeve, trying to hide it under his sleeping mat. He refused to say a word about what happened. When I pressed too hard, he asked me to let him leave the palace. He said he wanted to enlist, earn merit, and make a name. He'd never been given a chance to study at the Song residence. Now that he was in the palace, he didn't dare hope for it. He looked at me with reddened eyes. The grievance in them was exactly like the day I'd sneaked to my uncle's residence for fun and run into one of his kept concubines, sobbing at the gate for a proper status. He said, "Princess, I want to stand at your side, openly and honorably, like they do." I understood. He wanted me to give him an identity. Either make him a guard, so he could hold a military post someday, or let him study. Otherwise, if he drifted along like this, one day Father Emperor might remember there was a man in my quarters and order him cut down. Put that way, it wasn't a bad idea. I asked him, "Have you considered becoming the chief eunuch of the Imperial Secret Bureau? Close to the Son of Heaven, power in your hands." He shot me a look. Fine. I conceded the request wasn't excessive, but as long as the Song clan remained, it couldn't be granted easily. We had to move slowly, but I feared he'd misunderstand, so I couldn't say it outright. I changed the subject and nodded at the tablet in his arms. "What do you plan to do with that?" He froze, then looked up at me. "I want my mother divorced from Minister Song. When I'm grown, I'll build a separate ancestral hall and honor her there. My mother only married him because of an imperial marriage decree. She suffered in the Song residence all her life, and later, Princess, can you help me? Later, she was killed by that so-called concubinate. I knew that. Because it had been a granted marriage, a divorce was impossible unless another edict was issued. That was even more outrageous. For the emperor to issue an edict forcing a minister to divorce his wife, an already deceased wife, how humiliating would that be? I shouldn't have changed the subject. I thought and thought. In the end, all I could do was ask Father Emperor to grant his mother an honorary title. I soothed Alexander Shen, telling him to place the tablet back in the Song family shrine for now. When he achieved success later, he could pressure Minister Song into writing a private letter of divorce, just a token gesture. What I really planned was to do it after I ascended the throne. Father Emperor already intended to deal with the Song clan anyway, but Alexander Shen seemed unable to wait. Not long after, my rowdy guards struck at him, and at my deer. They slaughtered the deer Alexander Shen cared for. Then they got him drunk and framed him, hoping I'd despise him and punish him for negligence. They didn't understand. The deer was my beloved. Alexander Shen was the one I meant to protect. To touch him, and it right under my eyes. How stupid could they be? They crossed my line. And they tugged at the one taut string in Father Emperor's heart. What he feared most was my safety. Those people thought the law wouldn't punish the many. Father Emperor insisted on making an example. He had each of them beaten 30 strokes in public, then went after their families one by one as a warning. I seized the chance and begged Father Emperor to give Alexander Shen an opportunity. He asked me, "Are you sure he's worth trusting?" I nodded. He said, "Then I'll test him for you." After that, Father Emperor allowed him to attend martial lessons with the other boys. On his first day at the royal drill grounds, they took revenge and beat him until he was covered in wounds. It was my own little eunuchs who carried him back. I looked at him, my heart aching. "Forget it. I'll ask Father Emperor another day. I'll have Andrew Jiang train you personally." Alexander Shen clenched his teeth and couldn't answer. He couldn't even open his mouth. A physician was treating him, and sweat stood on his brow from the pain. Still, he lifted a hand and waved me off. His gaze didn't waver. "I told you. I want to stand at your side, openly and honorably." I understood. He knew Father Emperor was testing him, but I still went to Father Emperor. Andrew Jiang stood at his side. "One of the top masters in all of Yuzhou," he told me. "Princess, the best trial is to ignite the breath in his heart. If that breath holds, he won't fall. The one who wants to win grows faster than anyone." Father Emperor told me to wait and see whether Alexander Shen would give up on his own. So the three of us watched from the stands at the drill grounds every day, watching him get beaten. At night, after his wounds were dressed, I sat with him while Andrew Jiang went over the day's fights. The next day, he went back to be beaten again. Over and over. Half a year later, driven by sheer ruthlessness, he could take 8 against 1 and beat them all to the ground. The tide at the drill grounds turned. Those boys began to follow his lead. Father Emperor said to me, "Victoria, the blade has been sharpened. It's time to test it." Even now, I still think, If I had understood what he meant by test the blade, would I have let Alexander Shen wade into that muddy water? But it was too late for any of that. Chapter 2. What Father Emperor meant by test the blade was forcing Alexander Shen into a dead end, so he had to choose. He could tell that this boy, who wasn't good with words, carried a beam of light in his heart, a longing to draw close. So Father Emperor had word spread that he intended to grant a marriage between me and Benjamin Zhao. Then he summoned Alexander Shen to his hall and tossed dossier after dossier before him. They recorded how the Song clan covered the sky with one hand, took bribes, twisted the law, and even bribed bandits to pose as roaming raiders and attack the Empress's escort. Father Emperor's face was thunderous. Your entire Song clan, there isn't a single good person among you. Alexander Shen's face drained of color. He dropped to his knees, sweat spilling in heavy drops from his brow. But when he looked up at Father Emperor, his eyes didn't retreat. The Song clan is guilty, but Ethan isn't. Ethan begs he corrected himself. Ethan begs the Emperor to strike my name from the Song clan. Father Emperor studied him for a long moment, then said, You're the one Victoria chose. You've stayed by her side in this palace for 3 years. For the sake of that bond, I won't punish you, but I also won't allow you to remain with her. Go back, pack your things, and leave the palace. Think carefully about what you'll say to Victoria. At those words, Alexander Shen's once straight back folded. Ethan, thanks the Emperor's mercy. After he left, I stepped out from behind the screen, shot Father Emperor a glare, and hurried back to my bedchamber by a side path. In the short time I waited for Alexander Shen to come, I thought up countless ways to keep him, but even his excuse was clumsy. He told me, Tomorrow is my mother's death anniversary. I want to ask leave to go pay respects. We'd already agreed that before he held an official post, he wouldn't return to the Song residence. I frowned. Why go back again? He lifted his eyes and stared straight at me. If I want to go back, I go back. Why so many questions? Princess, don't forget, Song blood runs in me. Wherever I go, I can't change that. He made it sound like I was some outsider meddling with his freedom. In truth, he was venting the anger he'd swallowed with Father Emperor onto me. It stung. My temper flared, but I forced it down. In 2 days, all right? After my coming-of-age ceremony, I'll go back with you. Princess, he cut me off. A death anniversary can't be postponed. At that point, I had no reason to refuse, but he was clearly set on leaving. If even the Song family wouldn't take him, would he walk away and never see me again? Tears swelled in my eyes. He turned his face aside and refused to look at me. Please grant permission. He took a few steps, then turned back. He opened his palm and offered me a longevity locket. My mother left this to me. I'll give it to you as a coming-of-age gift. You know I have nothing else. In this life, I only wish you lasting peace, princess. He held my gaze for a long moment, then turned and left. I called after him. Come back early, I'll be waiting. In the blink of an eye, tears rolled down. But I knew it. Either he wouldn't return at all, or if he did, he wouldn't be the boy I'd loved. Father Emperor had long held so much evidence against the Song clan, yet he still hadn't moved. He lacked the chance to net them all at once. After all, they were descendants of the founding meritorious officials. So if Alexander Shen wanted to return to my side, he had only one path. Become Father Emperor's lever, and help convict the Song clan. In the end, he didn't disappoint Father Emperor. He went back to the Song residence himself and set the bait. He lured the clan into desperate rebellion, and with the merit of sacrificing his own kin for the greater cause, he became deputy commander of the capital city's imperial guards. He was no longer the nameless tag-along trailing behind me. On the day the Song clan was wiped out for treason, I stood on the city wall with Father Emperor, watching from afar. Alexander Shen sat on the execution platform. I waited until he returned to report, his body reeking of blood. He didn't look at me. Coldly, he recited the Song family's names one by one as they were executed. In that moment, I realized I was wrong. I had never stepped even half an inch into his heart, and I broke too, because what he'd done meant everything I'd planned for him, everything I'd built, was worthless. After Father Emperor left, I grabbed him and sobbed. Why did you do this? Why take on a crime people will curse you for? If you do this, who will tolerate you in the future? You did it wrong. You did it wrong. Do you understand? What father in the world would allow such a man to stand beside his daughter? From beginning to end, Father Emperor never intended to give him a chance. Alexander Shen didn't even lift his head. His voice was ice. "Princess, I only know this. They owed my mother and my younger brother a life. They had to pay it back." He had told me before. His mother had been pregnant when she died, 2 lives in one body. But the hatred in his eyes was too deep, deep enough to swallow everything. It terrified me. He was only 17. How could he, knowing the emperor already held proof of the clan's crimes, still pretend to let something slip, goad them into rebellion, and send nearly 1,000 clan members to the chopping block? In any case, our rift began that day. After that, he became the Yama everyone spoke of, following my father all day long. When I saw him again, I no longer treated him with the closeness I once had. I only stood there, waited for him to salute, then walked away in indifference. 2 more years passed. When I was 17, my father formally issued an edict naming me crown princess and moved me to the Eastern Palace. He personally chose capable people in court and appointed them to serve under me in the Eastern Palace. Just as I'd expected, Alexander was not among them. On the day I moved, Alexander came. He said he was there to retrieve some old belongings he'd left in my palace. I sat in the hall with a scroll in my hands and didn't answer for a long time. He stood below in silence. It looked exactly like the old days when he served me. Then my new attendant, a delicate-looking young eunuch, brought in a platter of newly arrived lychees from the south. As he walked, he said, "Princess, they'll need a while longer to pack. Have some chilled lychees to cool off." When he saw Alexander, he froze. Then he quickly saluted and said, "Commander Song." He slipped past Alexander, set the lychees on the table before me, and was about to withdraw when I stopped him. "Peel them. Feed me." The young attendant paused, then obeyed. When I took the translucent white fruit from his hand into my mouth, Alexander's face, cold as ice, finally cracked. It twisted. "Ugly." He said, "Princess, your status is not what it once was. Once you move to the Eastern Palace, there will be many eyes on you. You must be careful." "Careful about what?" I glanced at him from the corner of my eye and reached out to seize the young eunuch's hand. "He's only a eunuch." "What, Commander Song, are you afraid he'll steal your future?" The young attendant trembled. The name Yama Song was not for nothing. I gave a soft laugh and soothed him. "Don't be afraid. After I take the throne, I'll be a female emperor, ruler of the realm. Who couldn't I have if I wanted them?" The young attendant shook even harder. Alexander seemed amused. He saluted me. "Princess, I brought some gifts. They're outside. Have someone take them along later. They'll be useful." After he left, I went out to look. It was all newly made candle stands and palace lanterns, pure silver, gilded, exquisitely crafted with fresh designs. He must have spent every coin he'd saved. Just when I thought everything would slowly get better, my father fell ill that New Year and never fully recovered. Officials submitted memorials one after another, urging the crown princess to marry soon. First, to bring my father good fortune. Second, so the imperial consort could help the crown princess oversee the realm. One day, while I was nursing my father in his palace, he handed me those memorials and asked my opinion. I glanced at Alexander standing to the side. He looked as if he hadn't heard a thing. So I gave a cold snort. "If you want me to marry Adrian, I won't say no. But I won't let people put a knife to my neck and force me into a marriage. You understand that best, father. Once there's a first time, there will be a second." My father stayed silent, waiting for the rest. I continued. "In the end, they think I'm a woman. Without a man to prop me up, I can't sit steady in that seat. The officials discussing my marriage right now are only using Adrian to sound you out. If my father agreed, my Eastern Palace would soon be filled with new people. After my marriage, they would speak of heirs. One would not be enough. They would demand many. My father had spent years being pressed by ministers over heirs in his own harem. He understood the stakes. His face darkened with fury. "My realm is mine. I'll pass it to whoever I want." Cough, cough, cough. After a fit of coughing, he pointed at Alexander. "Go investigate. Find out who is pushing this behind the scenes." Alexander accepted the order. He left Qingming Hall with me. At the doorway, he asked in a low voice whether I didn't want to marry Adrian. I didn't say I did, and I didn't say I didn't. I only said I didn't want to marry now, and if I ever married, it would be someone I liked. Who would have thought that conversation would become the start of a disaster? Not long after, I heard that Andrew, the Marquis of Might and Valor, had fallen from his horse. He was gravely injured and didn't survive. The court, as a matter of course, reclaimed the military authority from his hands. At the same time, Adrian was ordered to observe 3 years of mourning. The Marquis's son had died young, and Adrian was the Marquis's most beloved grandson. That meant that for the next 3 years, Adrian could not marry me. He could not marry anyone. That was only what showed on the surface. I knew there was more. Adrian and the Marquis had been deeply attached. Adrian was frail as a child. More than once he'd fallen critically ill and slipped into long comas. Even his parents had given up on him. One was busy arranging concubines for her husband, the other kept a mistress outside. Only the Marquis devoted himself to this grandson. He cared for him year after year, patiently and relentlessly. That was how the clever, quick-witted Adrian came to be. The Adrian his parents later valued. The Adrian who could win the Zhao family a future. At first, when Adrian pretended to be sick to avoid the martial class trials, that too had been the Marquis's idea. He had long understood that the closer you stood to power, the fiercer the fighting became. He couldn't bear to see his little grandson spend the rest of his life struggling in the whirlpool of ambition. Yet the first to be swallowed by that whirlpool was the Marquis himself. Before Adrian left, he came to bid me farewell. Alexander feared he had come to plead for mercy. He feared even more that if my heart softened, I would agree. So he dismissed everyone and kept me trapped inside the hall. He told the attendants to send Adrian away, claiming I was unwell. Alexander said, "Aurora, it's settled. Don't do anything foolish and give those censors something to pounce on." I fought with all my strength, trying to wrench free of his grip. "I won't. He isn't here to plead. He's too smart not to see what's really behind this. He only came to say goodbye. Let me see him. You, him, and those other people have all lived in this palace with me for 3 years. Adrian is the only one who never tried to make trouble for you. What right do you have to doubt him?" By then, tears were already falling. Adrian heard the commotion inside. He leaned against the door and said, "Aurora, don't be sad. There will be many things like this ahead. The Zhao family and my grandfather's Liu family only enjoyed our glory these years because of imperial favor. Now the political winds are shifting. Wherever the ashes fall, those people have to endure it." I never expected that. In the end, he would be the one comforting me. His tone turned solemn. "But Adrian is leaving this time, and I'm afraid I'll never enter this imperial city again. I can't stay by your side anymore. The road is long, the mountains are high, the water's far. Adrian will pray to the gods every moment, asking that you stay healthy and that everything goes smoothly. Aurora, please take care of yourself." Adrian was his courtesy name. Then came the heavy thud of repeated kowtows. After that, the sound of his footsteps fading away. I lifted my tear-streaked face and demanded of Alexander, "Satisfied now? The Marquis is dead. Adrian is driven out. Whose idea was it?" As he wiped away my tears, he answered softly, "The Emperor wanted the military power reclaimed. He was afraid that after you married Adrian, Adrian would use the Marquis's influence to control you. As for using the chance to drive Adrian away, that was me. Because I don't want you marrying anyone else." I shook his hand off and stared at him with hatred. "Even if I don't marry anyone, I won't marry you. Ethan, you finally turned into the kind of person I hate. Don't send anything to my hall again. Get out." What followed was exactly as I'd expected. Nothing is sadder than a dead heart. Not long after Adrian left the capital, he fell ill and died. After that, whenever I saw Alexander, I said nothing. I never gave him a pleasant look. Anything he sent, I threw straight back at him. When my father heard, he tried to persuade me. "Aurora, don't be angry with Alex. Everything he did was for our dynasty. Look, only one Song family fell, and the Marquis was already desperate to become the second Song. Those founders who built the realm, none of them were harmless." Alex was Alexander's courtesy name. I had given it to him after he entered the palace. I hoped the rest of his life would be lived in light. I looked at my father's aged, exhausted face and didn't know what to say. It seemed that ever since Marcus drowned drunk and Alexander took his place, the only person my father truly trusted was Alexander. After that conversation, my father's illness worsened by the day. Often he would slip into muddled, unconscious sleep. I was devastated. I stayed by his bedside every day, never leaving. And Alexander used that time to purge his rivals, relying on my father's favor. As his rank and power rose, he quickly became the most untouchable minister at court. In the winter of the 21st year of Da'an, as my father lay near death, he granted Alexander a clan surname and elevated him to Prince Regent. In the most prosperous quarter of the capital, he ordered the construction of a princely manor for him, sprawling from east to west. On the day Prince Regent's manor was completed, all officials came to offer congratulations. I went too. It was my father's wish. He also told me to follow Empress Taizu's generational order and address Alexander as little royal uncle. He said, "Aurora, when I'm gone, you must seek his protection. You have done him a favor. He will keep you safe." As he spoke, his face, rarely clear these days, was full of guilt. His thin, withered hand held my wrist and rubbed it again and again. In that moment, I finally understood. Alexander had grown so powerful that I had no choice but to bow my head to him. I couldn't bear to make my father worry. So I brought attendants and gifts and went. When I arrived, Alexander sat at the head of the main hall, looking down as he received the officials' congratulations. The moment he saw me, he stood at once, reached out and pulled me close. Leaning to my ear, he said, "Aurora, look, I can finally stand beside you openly." His brows and eyes were full of pride. But I had no heart to truly congratulate him for getting what he wanted. I handed over the gifts in a rush, claimed I felt unwell, and left. On the way back, I ran into Eunuch Tong, my father's personal attendant. He said my father was waiting for me. But when I rushed back to Qingming Hall, my father was already dead. The vast palace hall was empty. He lay slumped over the edge of the bed. His face was dark, and the blood he had vomited all over the floor was dark as well. It was the sign of poison. I had handled his medicines myself the entire time. The only problem could have been the elixir Alexander had presented. I clutched my father in grief. With my sleeve, I wiped the dried blood from his lips. Then I straightened his body and laid him back on the bed. I was about to summon the attendants, but Eunuch Tong stopped me. He handed me a letter written in blood. It was my father's handwriting. Only after I read it did I learn the truth. These past years, Alexander had been threatening him with my safety. He wanted me to leave with the imperial seal and return when the time was right. He told me not to waste all the years he had spent teaching me. I asked Eunuch Tong, if I left, what about my father? What about him? What about the palace servants close to me? With tears in his eyes, Eunuch Tong said, "Princess, he will bury the emperor properly, and you don't need to worry about the servants. By now, the ones who can stay have already gone over to him. As for me, I will die for the emperor. Princess, you must go. The death bell will ring soon. If you wait any longer, you won't have a chance." Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, the death bell began to toll. Outside Qingming Hall, I could faintly hear chaotic footsteps. I wrapped the imperial seal in haste and jumped out the back window. The last thing I saw inside the hall was Eunuch Tong smashing his head against a pillar and dying. I meant to wait until dark and slip out in disguise. But the guards searching the palace found me quickly. They chased me all the way to the moat, and I jumped in. Before I jumped, I threw the imperial seal away. I knew I could never carry it safely for long. My father's private seal was enough. In the midst of it all, I tried to hide inside the capital. I wanted to win over a few old ministers and fight Alexander. But before I could even lay out my plan, I was sold out. I had to flee in panic. After surviving several attempts on my life, I learned my lesson. The capital was no longer a place I could stand. If I wanted to accomplish anything, I had to leave the capital. Go farther, somewhere Alexander's reach did not yet extend. Later, outside the capital, I encountered a newly recruited civilian convoy escorting grain for the northern campaign. I blended in with them and went to the border. Alexander did not seize the throne. Instead, he set Qingming Hall on fire. To the outside world, he declared that the emperor had died and the crown princess was missing. As Prince Regent, he temporarily assumed authority as regent. I thought that if he wasn't rushing to take the throne, then I still had a chance. And that chance lay with the border army. I searched and searched, until I chose my young general, Gabriel. The first time I saw him, he was fighting the enemy. Silver armor, dark robes, a long spear, a face like carved jade. He charged at the very front, impossible to miss. Especially to someone like me, already in enemy hands, a captive. If we trace it back, this disaster was caused by Victor Shu, then commander of the Northern Campaign. But dig deeper, and the fault belonged to Alexander Shen's hunger for glory. Yizhou and Beifeng had long stood opposed. Beifeng relied on powerful cavalry and often raided south to steal grain and seize civilians. Our army relied on infantry. Without cavalry's mobility in battle, we were often forced to take the blows. Taizu and father spent 2 generations managing the frontier before it finally stabilized somewhat. But the moment Alexander Shen held power, he ordered the redeployment of defenses across 7 border cities. He declared he would drive Beifeng back into the northern desert. This enraged Khan Dargan of Beifeng. He personally led 20,000 cavalry to attack Heitu Fortress City, which Victor Shu defended. It was our northern gateway. If it fell, Beifeng's army could sweep south and reach the capital city. The enemy's momentum was ferocious. Soon the Ministry of War issued a new decree, ordering Victor Shu to hold Heitu at all costs and wait for reinforcements. Victor Shu was old and slippery. He knew he would die no matter what, because he couldn't hold it. But if he failed, it wouldn't be only his death. It could mean the extermination of 10 clans. Since he couldn't hold, he had to make Khan Dargan withdraw. After thinking it through, he came up with a plan. Let them loot. After all, the northern tribes had little learning and little political strategy. They acted by their own logic, bandit logic. They recognized wealth, not people. Once they'd stolen enough, they would naturally go home. So he secretly sent people to negotiate with Khan Dargan. He said the court would allow a livestock market to open at Heitu, letting Beifeng merchants drive horses, cattle, and sheep into the city to trade. That way, Dargan's 20,000 troops entered Heitu territory with a few hundred horses under the guise of trade. They looted wildly for 10 days before withdrawing in force. Before leaving, Dargan felt he'd still lost a few hundred war horses, which bruised his pride. So he sent 200 cavalry to seize the camp where those horses were being held under orders. They carried off the men, the horses, and the grain. And unfortunately, I was in that camp. There was no way to resist. Under Beifeng cavalry blades, resistance meant only death. I went with them, thinking of 1,000 ways to escape. None could be carried out. The reality was simple. 2 legs can't outrun 4. Even if I got lucky and stole a horse, 1 whistle would call it back, and I couldn't ride well. So when Gabriel Shu came with his men to cut them off, I was crouched by a shallow ditch, smearing mud over my face and body. He charged the enemy like a god descending. The command banner snapped behind him in the wind. Wherever his blade passed, heads dropped like melons. Almost single-handedly, he scattered the Beifeng soldiers, who had eaten and drunk and were leaning together, ready to sleep where they were for the night. I was thrilled. On the spot, I decided I would follow this man. I washed myself clean without hesitation. I tore open my collar, lured a Beifeng soldier into chasing me, then sprinted straight toward Gabriel Shu. "General, save me!" I cried with all my strength as soon as he saw me, reaching for him. His gaze flicked briefly to my bare thigh. Then he hauled me up with one hand and, with the other, swung his blade and took that Beifeng soldier's head. Hot blood sprayed over my face and body in an instant. I froze, terrified. All I could think was, if his blade had been even a little off, my head would have been gone. The horse galloped on. Dull grunts kept coming as steel met flesh. I bounced so hard I pitched forward and back. Of course, I couldn't pitch forward far. At most, my chest pressed against his back, soft curves against taut muscle. The moment turned strangely suggestive. Gabriel Shu's body went rigid. He barked. "Hold on tight." Then he spurred the horse into the thickest knot of the enemy again and kept cutting melons. No, cutting heads. I couldn't look. I buried my face against his back and clung to his waist with both arms. Only when the screams faded did I hear him pant and say, "Do you know you almost strangled me?" I loosened my grip and was about to speak, but his booming shout cut me off. "Brothers, count them. Not one missing. This decides whether we can pull it off." A while later, his men gathered all the Beifeng heads and lined them up neatly before us. I was terrified. but I still couldn't help counting. Not one more, not one less. These past few days, I'd been thinking about escape. I'd counted those men over and over. Gabriel Shu jumped off his horse and looked them over. Pack them in lime powder. Leave 100 men to escort the supplies and horses back to the city. The rest of you, put on their clothes and follow me to raid the Heitu main camp. My ears rang. I couldn't believe it. I turned to check the command banner again. It was Yuzhou's, no mistake. So who was this man? As I stood there in disbelief, he turned back to me and grinned, showing a row of white teeth. Miss, you're lucky. You caught me right as I'm about to make myself a general. If it works, I'll make you a general's wife too. How about it? His eyes shone. He practically vibrated with excitement, like a cunning, ferocious beast. I felt as if I'd lifted a stone only to crush my own foot. Victor Su's actions were inhuman, but rebellion was even worse. Could he succeed? Was he sure? Even if he did, what if Khan Dargon realized those 200 cavalry never returned and came back to slaughter again? The facts proved that Gabriel Shu was not only fierce but bold, careful, and he carried his people in his heart. He turned against Victor Shu and seized military power because he couldn't stand Victor Shu's hunger for merit, his willingness to treat civilian lives as nothing. So he led a raid on those 200 isolated Beifeng soldiers. Then he put on their clothes and rushed back to Heitu through the night. The city guards didn't dare stop them, because Victor Shu's order was still in place. At the sight of Beifeng soldiers, they were to detour. So Gabriel Shu and his men rode unimpeded into Heitu's central command camp. He killed Victor Shu, who was preparing to report a great victory to the court. Then, as planned, he looted the camp and pinned Victor Shu's death on Beifeng cavalry. That was the first step. Next, he sent a memorial to the court. He asked to take over the defense. The commander was dead, and he was willing to assume the duty and wait for reinforcements. At the same time, in the name of Deputy Commander and Victor Shu's adopted son, he organized forces and blocked Khan Dargon's returning army outside the city. After holding for 5 days, reinforcements arrived. Together, they drove the enemy back. In the end, with rewards for merit, and with the 200 Beifeng heads added, he was formally appointed Grand General who pacifies the north. At the victory banquet, Gabriel Shu pinched my soft waist and asked, "So, do you dare to be my wife?" The moment he said it, the whole place fell silent. Everyone's eyes turned to me. Nothing is worse than sudden silence. I panicked. These days, he had kept me at his side through everything. It made several of his close subordinates deeply unhappy. They suspected I was a spy. In front of me, they had even urged Gabriel Shu to execute me. I asked them what country's spy I looked like. They said they weren't sure. What a filthy accusation, and they couldn't even name it properly. What spy would be like me, knowing Yuzhou's customs inside out? I even had royal secrets. Did they dare to hear them? But no matter how many times I insisted I was only a singing girl from a wealthy household in the capital city, someone who fled because a fat master over 60 took a fancy to me, and I refused to submit, refusing to say his name because I feared being sent back, they still kept their suspicions. Gabriel Shu, however, was carefree. He patted my shoulder and said that when I had time, I could sing a tune for the brothers, let these rough men hear the sound of the capital city. So when he said this now, I was as nervous as his brothers were. I feared he would remember that earlier talk and make me sing in public. It wasn't that I didn't want to sing. I was tone deaf. I feared I'd disgrace capital city music. As for his brothers, they feared he was serious about sleeping with me. One of them couldn't help warning, "General, you don't even know her name yet, do you? Meaning, a woman of unknown origin, and you still dare?" Gabriel Shu's handsome face darkened. He thought it over, as if it did make sense. Then he turned to me again. "Miss, things have been too busy. I never had time to ask. What's your name?" I glanced at his thick-armed, murderous brothers and answered in a trembling voice. "I'm of slave status. My old name was given by my master. Why don't you give me a new one?" He thought for a moment. "You've got delicate features. I'll call you Gabby." "Fine. As long as it wasn't pretty slave." He slapped his thigh and flashed those white teeth again. "Then you're agreeing to the marriage. We'll keep it simple. Tonight we'll go straight to the bridal chamber. How about that?" This was a little too simple. "All right, I lowered my head, pretending to be shy. What are you waiting for? Go wash up and lie on the bed. Wait for me. With that, he shoved me out. General, you also. You're a bit too impatient. I didn't say it. It was the man who had warned him earlier. His voice was furious. I followed the guard back to Gabriel Shu's tent and found the bathwater already prepared. I strongly agreed with that man's words. Then again, maybe it was because I was too beautiful. But this pace was too fast. I wasn't ready to give myself up. He was handsome enough, yes, but I wasn't here looking for a plaything. I was looking for a man who could help me take revenge. Gabriel Shu was smart and wild. I wasn't fully sure I could make him work for me. I stood before the tub, wondering whether to bathe or stall a little longer. Just then, Gabriel Shu's hand swept open the tent flap. So my wife hasn't even undressed yet. Let your husband help you. He reeked of drink, his embrace unsteady as he came up behind me, shaking while he fumbled at the ties of my clothes. Just as I was getting angry, just as I was about to ask if he was done pawing at me, he lifted me and threw me hard into the tub. Talk? For you really? I've gone this far and you still won't show your hand. Do you actually think you can be a general's wife? He looked down at me. His voice was cool and clear. There was no drunkenness at all in his bright eyes. Only then did I understand. He'd used it as an excuse to search me. More importantly, all these days he'd indulged me only to test me. Meaning, if I'd asked one question too many, if I'd taken one step too far, the blade he used to chop people like melons would have chopped me into pieces. The thought sent a cold sweat down my back. I couldn't answer. I could only stare at him, eyes wide, playing dumb while my mind spun. The turn was too sudden, nothing like what I'd expected. How was I supposed to stay alive? While I froze, Gabriel reached down and yanked me up again. He tugged at the ties of my undergarment and murmured, "Do I have to do it before you'll talk? Fine, I'll grant your wish." Just as his kiss was about to land, I stopped him. "Wait, I'll tell you." He paused and looked at me. He was so close his breath brushed my face, making me shiver. I'm not a spy. My mouth was full of saliva, and the words came out thick and garbled. Worse, the moment I spoke, a thread of saliva slipped out. It was painfully awkward. I'm really not a spy. The only lie I told you was this. I'm not a songstress at all. I'm just a somewhat pretty kitchen girl, and my master isn't 60. He's not even 30. He looks fine, but his wife is a tigress. All right. I'm just a runaway slave who believes in love and freedom. I didn't want to invent more. That was it. If he pressed again, all I could do was show him my father's private seal. Maybe it was his first time searching a woman. He hadn't been thorough enough. He hadn't found the little cloth pouch I'd sewn into my undergarment. At last he couldn't hold it in and laughed. If you want my body, just say so. It's not embarrassing. With my looks, I'm top tier anywhere. He laughed, but I cried. After watching him kill, I'd been truly terrified just now. He stopped too. With his fingertip, he wiped away my tears and asked very seriously, "Do you really want to marry me?" I nodded. After all the time and effort I'd spent, I had no choice but to want it now. Then wait a little longer. His tone turned grave. He took the outer robe from the rack and wrapped it around me. I've already petitioned the court to lead troops against North Seal. In this battle, I will drive them back into the northern desert and put an end to our border troubles for good. If I'm lucky enough to return, I'll marry you. If I don't, then everything I own will be yours. Take it and find someone else. It sounded as if he liked me too. I was dazed. He held me close, resting his chin against my forehead. His voice softened. Don't overthink it, Gabby. I just want a home. 8 years ago in Hedu, at this same season, our village was raided by North Seal soldiers. Fire took everything. After that, I was alone in the world. Before I met you, I always ate by myself. Whether it was begged food or a whole table after I entered the army and became deputy commander of the Hedu garrison. I also walked alone, whether it was crossing mountains in exile or charging into battle. Gabby, they're all afraid of me. They think I don't care about my life, only I know the truth. I just want a different kind of life. Something warm trickled down onto my forehead. He was crying. He said, "Look, behind this camp are 10,000 lights. When the feast ends, many of them can go home. Wives and children are waiting for them. They think I do all this for fame and profit. I don't. Before I met you, I only wanted to help them hold on to what was theirs. After I met you, I want to hold on to you too." His words made me think of my father. He once told me that to be an emperor, you had to give everything to the realm. You had to protect your people so they could eat, stay warm, and live in peace. And Gabriel's embrace was warm, like my father's had been. It felt as if a string in my heart had been plucked by his choking sobs. I shifted, trying to free a hand to wipe his tears. "Gabriel, don't cry. You're making my heart a mess." "Gabby, don't move." He held me tighter. "I'm not crying. I'm happy because you agreed to marry me. Do you know? That day on the battlefield, when you held me from behind, I told myself, you've seen this girl's body. You have to take responsibility. The truth is, I like the feeling of being relied on. I want a home too much. But they said my origins were unclear, that I had to be a spy. As a commander, he had to investigate. Yet the more he lived beside me, the more his heart shifted, and the more it shifted, the more he feared I truly might be a spy. This time, he cried out loud. I said nothing. I only patted his back gently. After a long while, he sniffed and straightened, looking into my eyes. "When I pushed you out of the tent tonight, I was thinking, if I found anything on you, I'd kill you on the spot. I'd spare you the torment of prison. Then I'd bury you with my own hands and set up a grave marker for you. It would say, 'Tomb of my beloved wife,' and for the rest of my life, I'd never think of taking a wife again." I had to admit, even when a beauty cried, he was still beautiful. I was too moved to speak. I leaned in and kissed him instead. Of course, it was only that one kiss, because Gabriel would rather cover up his thing and sleep on the floor than touch me. He even had a nice way of putting it. He said he couldn't let me so quickly end up with the chance of becoming a widow. The next day, he settled me in the quarters for military households and their families. It was a small courtyard, neat and clean. There was a vegetable patch inside, 2 side rooms to the east and 2 to the west. Only the 2 of us lived there. He went on duty at the barracks during the day and came back at night. Back when I still didn't know how to cook, he'd go begging the wives and aunties next door. He'd ask each family to make 1 extra dish and bring it over at mealtime. That way, we could fill a whole table. When he got home at night, I'd warm everything up and serve it to him. He'd eat with genuine delight, praising me as he ate. My wife cooks so well. I couldn't stand him lying with a straight face, so I asked the wives and aunties to teach me. The first thing I learned was vegetable rice stew. I picked a little of every kind of vegetable from our patch, mixed in torn pieces of dough, stirred it all together, and made him a big bowl. He was overjoyed. He held the bowl, lowered his head, squatted by the stove, and finished the whole thing in one go. Afterward, he still praised me. "Wife, this is delicious. If I could eat a bowl like this every day, I'd be so happy." I was happy too. I took the bowl from him and said, "Then I'll make it again tomorrow." "The Ministry of War's order is out," he said. "Tomorrow I'm going to war." I froze. Then I thought for a moment and said, "I'll wait for you to come back. When you do, I'll make you a whole table of good food." In the end, I did learn to cook a whole table of dishes. But he never got to eat them. He won the battle. Gabriel got his wish and drove the people of North Seal back to their lair. But the court's order summoning him back to the capital was urgent. After he returned to Hetu, he didn't have time to go home at all. He sent men to pick me up directly. When I saw him, I learned he was wounded. An arrow wound. It had missed his heart by only an inch. He'd almost died. I held him and cried hard, snot and tears all over him. He straightened me up, cupped my face, and promised again and again, "I'm fine, I'm really fine, I'm whole. Nothing's missing." I didn't believe him. I insisted on yanking open his clothes to check properly. But tugging and touching led to our eyes meeting, and we ended up sleeping together right there in the carriage. If we'd been quieter, if it had been quicker, no one would have noticed. But Gabriel, damn him, had too much stamina. He worked me for hours. The noise got so bad everyone knew. The general and his wife had consummated their marriage. I didn't get out of the carriage for days. First, I was mortified. Second, my legs were weak. Third, there wasn't a spot on me he hadn't marked. I was so furious I couldn't help punching him a few times. He just laughed, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me, loudly, for a long while. "Don't be mad. Once we're back in the capital, I'll marry you properly." But I couldn't be happy. because I knew that once we returned, my dream would have to end. Then Gabriel would no longer be Gabriel. He would be the blade I had sharpened for revenge. Still, before we left, I wanted to keep my promise and cook him a good meal. So I tried every way I could to stay at the general's residence a little longer. But he was too busy. He'd earned great merit. Young and accomplished, he was the court's rising star, and too many people were trying to attach themselves to him. I cooked day after day, and he still never got the chance to eat, until the last time, when I ran into the people Alexander had sent to look for me on Market Street. Then I knew Gabriel would never eat a whole table of food I cooked with my own hands. I felt truly sorry about it, and I wondered what his reaction would be tomorrow at court, when Alexander announced our engagement right there in the hall. But the next day, the first thing Alexander announced was not our engagement. It was the late emperor's abdication edict. To be honest, when the unfamiliar eunuch standing beside Alexander Shen read Father Emperor's edict, I was extremely tense. I thought Alexander Shen had tricked me. There was no way he would keep an edict that passed the throne to me. But I heard it clearly, word for word. The edict said the throne would be passed to me, Princess Qingping, Crown Princess, Song Victoria. The ministers were dumbfounded too. Only when Alexander Shen produced the imperial jade seal of state and invited me to sit on the dragon throne did they finally react. They knelt with him and bowed to me. Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! Their voices were perfectly in unison, ringing up into the sky. I held my breath for a long time. That was it? Just like that? Weren't there supposed to be so many people worried I couldn't hold the throne? And no one even asked why I'd been missing for so long. When I was fleeing, I heard countless stories about Alexander Shen controlling the court. He chased glory. When conditions were bad for battle, he forced an assault on Beifeng's border city. Instead, he drew Khan Dargan's army right to the frontier. He squandered military funds. Despite the drought north of the river, he privately raised taxes by 30%. People couldn't survive. Corpses lay everywhere. He indulged in luxury. He built palaces on a grand scale. He even forced noble families to donate money under assigned quotas. When complaints rose, he refused advice and dismissed a veteran minister of 3 reigns in open court. He used factory spies to fabricate charges and purge opponents like a madman. So this was the court after Alexander Shen had purged everyone? My gaze swept across the officials' faces. Only then did I realize many familiar people were gone. Their replacements were newcomers, each of them meek-eyed and obedient. When my eyes landed on Gabriel Shu, his dark eyes gave off a cold, distant light that jolted me. His lips moved. Without a sound, he warned me, "Watch your jade seal." What did that mean? Was he going to snatch it? At that moment, Alexander Shen prompted me. "Does your majesty have any instructions? If not, hurry up and tell them to rise." I gave an "oh," then waved a hand with feigned gravity. "Rise, my ministers." "Thank you, your majesty." Immediately after, a second imperial decree was read aloud. It was written in my name. It announced that Alexander Shen and I would soon hold our wedding ceremony. Still, no one objected. I understood at once how clever he was. Everything had happened too suddenly, and it was the new ruler's first decree. Who would choose that moment to invite trouble? The officials who could stand in court and debate politics were not the sort to pick a fight they hadn't prepared for. This way, he could become the imperial consort smoothly. And with the merit of supporting a reigning empress, he could continue to control the court. In a flash, the entire hall filled with voices congratulating Alexander Shen. Gabriel Su stepped forward too. He strode quickly toward Alexander Shen, stopping very close to him. He stared straight at him. Alexander Shen stared back, eyes full of provocation. The ministers quietly retreated, leaving the two of them facing off below the vermilion steps. The air tightened like drawn steel. I saw the factory spies at the palace doors. Their hands had already slipped into their sleeves. Hidden crossbows were ready to fire. My heart leapt into my throat. I called out, "Gabriel Su." "I'm here," he answered at once. Only then did he slowly shift his gaze away from Alexander Shen's face. He clasped his hands to me and said, "Don't be afraid. I wasn't going to cause trouble. You and I may have a past, but who you marry is still your choice." The ministers looked stunned at first. Then their faces lit up with the pure enjoyment of gossip. But I want to remind you of one thing. By ancestral rule, before the wedding ceremony, the regent prince should return to his mansion and wait there. His tone was unhurried, his words firm, impossible to argue with. As long as he wasn't going to quarrel with Alexander Shen in open court, I could breathe again. Then do it that way. Watching his back as he left, I thought, I have to find a chance to warn him. Lie low for now. Then I'll reward him for his merit. I'll hand him command of the capital city's 3 garrisons. Then I'll clip Alexander Shen's wings. Finally, I'll have the censors submit impeachments against him. Step by step, steady and sure, I'll take back imperial power. But reality proved I didn't understand Gabriel Shu at all. His performance in court was only the calm before the storm. That very night, he gathered his brothers, stormed the regent prince's mansion, and tied Alexander Shen up. At dawn the next day, I had just gotten out of bed. I hadn't even washed my face when Gabriel Shu walked in. I panicked and rubbed at my bleary eyes. Why are you here? How did you get in? He shook the waist token in his hand. A short gold thread cord dangled from it. I recognized it. It was the one Alexander Shen wore at his waist. Where is he? I asked. Bound, Gabriel Shu said. He's in the death row prison now. Liu Ye and the others are guarding him. That place is easy to defend and hard to take. I still had time to come into the palace and ask for an edict. As he spoke, he turned aside and pointed to 2 stacks of memorials on a tray held by attendants. This stack accuses Alexander Shen of his crimes. That stack is the ministers demanding severe punishment. Which do you want to read first? I hurriedly pulled out 2 and flipped through them. The signatures really were the minister's own hands. How did you do this? It had only been a few hours. He'd arrested a man and assembled memorials, nearly a full service start to finish. His jade-like face carried a gentle smile. On my way in, I ran into the ministers waiting to enter court at the palace gate. So I called out, "The regent prince has coerced the new ruler and committed treason. He's already been thrown into prison. I'm going to request an edict from the emperor now. Do any of you have memorials you'd like me to deliver on your behalf?" He made it sound easy, but it must have been a massive show of force, and he wasn't afraid they'd label him the second Alexander Shen. I opened one memorial accusing Alexander Shen. Every charge was a capital offense. I thought of yesterday, before Alexander Shen left the palace. He held my hand and said, "It's wonderful, Victoria. I can finally stand beside you openly." If he did all this just to get me, did that mean keeping him by my side back then was the beginning of every mistake? Chapter 3. During my flight, I imagined the moment of successful revenge countless times. He would kneel below, I would sit above, I would accuse him righteously, then sentence him to death. Or he might die from a cup of poisoned wine in our open and secret struggle. Or he might fall to a long blade driven through his chest when armies met. No matter which, I should have looked wise and calm because I was the avenger. But when the moment truly came, I was only flustered. After a long silence, I looked at Gabriel and said, "By precedent, this should go to the 3 judicial offices for a joint trial." Gabriel was startled, then laughed. He braced one hand on the desk, leaned in and asked, "What are you hesitating about?" Yes, what was I hesitating about? This couldn't wait. But I wanted to cry. I thought of the noon when I first met him. I thought of the many dusks when he waited at the palace gate with that little deer, waiting for me to finish my lessons. In an instant, the gentle Alexander, the cold Alexander, the vicious Alexander, all surged into my mind. In the end, it froze on the image from yesterday, him offering me the seal, humble and obedient. "I don't know," I said with terrible effort. "Gabriel, what I saw these 2 days, what he did, it isn't the same as what I imagined." I was frightened. Gabriel came over and gathered me into his arms. He said, "The day before yesterday, when you told me who you were at the palace gate, I'd already planned everything I'd do today. But I can only do this for you once." He let go, straightened me, and put a brush in my hand. "I know Alexander is different to you, but he has to die. In the eyes of the world, he's a traitorous minister. Killing him will be your first achievement after you ascend the throne." My body trembled. "Let me see him. There's something I need to confirm." I wanted to know whether father had been poisoned to death by Alexander's hand. Gabriel covered my eyes with his palm. Guiding my hand, he drew a circle on the paper and said softly, "Don't go. I'll do these things for you. Poison, blade, or beheading at Market Street. You just need to pick one." "Gabriel, why are you doing this? You have no feud with him. He even admired your command in war." I tried to pull his hand away. Before we entered the capital, he'd told me he wanted to make many friends there. He wanted to be an idle general in the capital, with no wars to fight. He didn't want people calling him Yama anymore, not even the jade-faced one. I caught the faint scent of blood still clinging to him, and it made my chest ache. I knew that after tonight, with his military merit and now his merit in saving the throne, he would become too powerful. Not only would he have no friends, he would also set himself against me. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Since ancient times, powerful ministers and emperors cannot coexist. Gabby, if you don't kill him now, he'll turn around and kill me. One day he might even kill you, but I'd rather we both die because I don't want you controlled by anyone." I went still. My young general, he knew everything. He knew I meant to use him, and he knew I was doubting him now. Yes, the blade I'd sharpened with my own hands was about to kill the man blocking my road to imperial power. And what I cared about most was whether that blade would betray me too. My reluctance to kill Alexander was, in truth, fear that Gabriel would become dominant. He saw through it. So he told me, "You still have the wooden token I gave you, right? I said it was my life. One day when you want me dead, send someone to bring it to me. Believe me, it will return to you very soon, in another form." The token had his name carved on it. Every soldier of the Yujo dynasty had one. When a man fell in battle, the token would be delivered to his family. After the Northern Campaign, Gabriel gave his token to me as a pledge of love. Father once said the first thing an emperor must learn is to issue an order that benefits the people. He was wrong. The first thing an emperor should learn is cold-bloodedness. "Poison," I said calmly to Gabriel. "Leave him whole. Tell the world he died suddenly, and don't implicate the people in his manner." It wasn't that I clung to old feelings. It was that showing mercy to Alexander would give people like him something to hold on to. Gabriel left. I stared at the thin line of dawn on the horizon, and tears slid down in silence. I won. Yet I felt no joy at all, because from now on it would be me alone. Alexander was executed. Gabriel returned with an empty bottle and a blood-stained outer robe. As I announced Alexander's crimes, I also declared that no one else would be pursued. A new sovereign's accession always comes with amnesty. Then came the coronation ceremony. Worshipping heaven and earth, offering rites at the imperial ancestral temple, proclaiming to all under heaven, receiving the officials' homage, changing the reign title to Qingping. At the final palace banquet, I drank until I was dead drunk and sobbed loudly. It was Gabriel who steadied the situation. He dismissed the stunned officials and escorted me back to my chambers. He was about to leave, but I grabbed his sleeve. "Don't go. It's too empty here. I'm afraid." I raised a finger, pointing at the vast, empty hall, and then at my own chest. He said softly, "All right, I won't go." I nodded. With drunken, bleary eyes, I rested my face in the crook of his arm and told the young palace maid, "Prepare bath water for the general. Wash him clean. He's coming to bed tonight." Those shameless words frightened the maid holding the hangover soup so badly she nearly scalded her hand. Gabriel rescued her. He told her, "The emperor is joking. You can go." Then he lowered his head and asked me, "Gabby, are you unhappy?" I was. I gave a muffled sound and tears rolled down again. Because Alexander was dead and Gabriel still wouldn't let me sleep. He lifted my face. "Then it's perfect. I have a gift for you." He clapped his hands. "Come out." At his words, a white shadow drifted from behind the curtain. Hair loose and wild, bloodstains at the collar, face pale as paper. He looked at me and said, "Aurora, I died so miserably, and you didn't even come to see me once." It was Alexander, back from the dead. I jolted, nearly leaping up. Above me came Gabriel's soft laugh. "Yes, it's him, just dug out of the grave. His complexion isn't great, glad. I wanted to wait a couple of days before bringing him to you, but you were truly unhappy. And you haven't dressed up either. Just make do and look." "What do you mean?" What I really wanted to ask was whether the thing in front of me was human or ghost. He said he had something to tell you, so I had to let him die first. then dig him up and let him explain his grievance face to face. Gabriel pushed me forward, then sat outside and drank tea. In that brief space, Alexander tidied his appearance and said, "Aurora, don't be afraid, I'm still alive. Do you remember how the late emperor once asked you, if the people of the realm refused to accept a woman ascending the throne, what would you do?" Yes, Father had asked me that. I hadn't had time to answer. Father had said, "Don't worry, I'll create the right moment for you. A moment when the world will see you as light itself." Alexander said, "Aurora, I am that moment." He was right. Without his earlier tyranny, why would the ministers hope for me to restore legitimacy? He hadn't lied either, because when that conversation happened, it was only Father and me in the hall. "The late emperor said you were too young," Alexander continued. "You weren't a match for those old ministers, and many of them were founding meritorious officials. He'd held on all these years by sheer effort, so he chose me to clear the road for you." Cough, cough. A violent fit of coughing seized him. Dark red blood spilled from his lips again. Gabriel had said he must die as my first achievement, so Alexander really had drunk the poison? Seeing him sway, I screamed, "Gabriel, summon the imperial physician! Summon the physician!" Maybe he could still be saved. Gabriel leaned in unhurried. "Are you stupid? Can you be seen like this? If you go back on your word, how will anyone follow you later? Relax, he won't die. Are you two done talking? When you're done, I'll take him out of the palace to remove the poison." Alexander staggered toward him, irritated. "Hurry up, or are you trying to drag it out so I die, and you can have her to yourself?" My head spun. "So Alexander can be saved?" Gabriel supported him and said with a scowl, "Yes, not only can he be saved, once he takes a new identity, he can come back later as your consort." Alexander spat another mouthful of blood and rolled his eyes. Whether from coughing up blood or from trying to anger Gabriel, I couldn't tell. Gabriel looked up at me. "Two consorts at once. Surprised? Didn't see it coming?" It was beyond surprising. Watching them brace each other as they walked out, I felt like I was dreaming. They kept bickering the whole way. Alexander said, "I'll need a new name. I'll be called Bamboo Horse, as in childhood sweethearts." Gabriel shot back, "Then I'll take a new courtesy name, Beloved, as in the beloved she found with her own hands." Moonlight covered the ground. 2 shadows became 3. So tonight, the Empress still had no one to share her bed. But that was fine. We had all the time in the world. Extra, heart and bloom. I am the newly enthroned Empress of the Yuzhou dynasty. Right now I have a headache because my Grand Tutor won't let me take any imperial consorts. He is a good Grand Tutor. He was also my first teacher when I was young. Back when Alexander Shen, as Regent Prince, held power, the Grand Tutor once publicly rebuked him for being unworthy as a subject, because my whereabouts were unknown. He was dismissed for it. At this moment, this veteran of 3 reigns, the imperial teacher of the current dynasty, a great scholar famous across the Yuzhou dynasty, is glaring and blowing his mustache as he lectures without pause. "Your Majesty, you've been on the throne for barely 3 months. These are already the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th imperial consorts you've wanted to take. The treasury is empty. Aren't you afraid the world will point at you and curse you for lust and excess?" "What I want is what I want. You've been blocking me the whole time anyway. So far, my harem has only one person, the Grand General Gabriel Su." I rubbed my head and reminded him. "Besides, you were the one shouting that I must take new imperial consorts and produce an heir as soon as possible. How did that become my indulgence?" "But you can't just bring any ugly riffraff into the palace. That actor with the surname Liu is more seductive than a woman. One look and you can tell he'll be the kind who bewilders his ruler. And that common wrestler and street performer with the surname Chiao. Nothing but muscles. He can't speak without swearing. How is that fit for an imperial consort? As for the one surnamed Wu and Zhou, don't even mention them. One looks like a weasel, the other like a rat. I could accept that as your Majesty having unusual tastes, but it's unfair to the future little prince. Aren't you afraid the little prince will resent you for poor aesthetics someday?" I needed to clear my name. As someone who judges by looks, I have only one standard. Beautiful. The Grand General Gabriel Shu fits it. The former Regent Prince Alexander Shen fits it too. The reason I raised such a fuss about taking those ugly riffraff was because Gabriel Shu gave me that rotten idea. Because I needed to bring the fake dead. Identity changed Alexander Shen into the palace, openly and properly. To do that, I made an exception and opened a special imperial exam. I recruited talented young men into office. Then, over objections, I personally named him top scholar. By over objections, I really only overruled one person, the Grand Tutor. His reason was simple. The top scholar looked too much like Alexander Shen. Because of that, he thought I was choosing by appearance. He said he had every reason to suspect I was paving the way to take Adrian Lin into my harem. No one knows me like the Grand Tutor, but he only knows what I like. He doesn't know what I fear. It was drifting off topic fast. I cut him off. Then why is the new top scholar Adrian Lin not acceptable? Adrian Lin was Alexander Shen's new mask after faking his death. Lin was his mother's surname. The Grand Tutor said, "Your Majesty, stop pretending. I know you've liked Alexander Shen since you were young, but don't forget, you're the emperor now. Your chief consort, Gabriel Shu, is the man who killed the traitorous minister. The whole court has suffered under that man's pressure. You can't chill their hearts." I understood. He thought if I took the top scholar, everyone would feel sick looking at that face. He even compromised for once. As for an heir, it can wait a little. The Grand General Gabriel Shu looks tall and strong. No, it can't wait. I shook my head quickly. Not that it couldn't wait. It was that it couldn't wait at all. Because taking Adrian Lin was Gabriel Shu's idea. Ever since I learned what Adrian Lin endured as Regent Prince all those years, for me and for the Shen family's realm, I became a devoted admirer. The two of them hit it off at once. From then on, brotherhood meant everything. Not long after I took the throne, Gabriel Shu became my imperial noble consort with the title Chen, thanks to his merit in executing the traitor. He had the support of all, but from the day he entered the palace, he refused to let me touch him. He insisted that Adrian Lin form a bond with me first. By rights, Adrian Lin should be the elder brother. Until Adrian Lin entered the palace, he would not serve in my bed. Fine, but he still slept beside me every night, saying that even if he couldn't eat, he had to guard it. I had no idea who he was torturing. He'd forced himself into becoming a decorative figure in everyone's eyes, nice to look at, useless in practice. And he didn't care at all. His whole mind was set on how to bring Adrian Lin into my palace. So he came up with this plan. First, find a few truly eye-searing candidates. Let the Grand Tutor oppose them. Maybe after opposing and opposing, the Grand Tutor would turn around and find Adrian Lin pleasing by comparison. And that was how I began my path of being blasted for taking consorts by the Grand Tutor and others. Every 2 or 3 days, he'd curse me out. Just thinking about it made me miserable. Then the Grand Tutor's "Why can't it wait?" pulled me back to reality. I rubbed my temples and said nothing. I couldn't sell Gabriel Shu out. I still craved his beautiful face. The Grand Tutor's expression suddenly changed. He looked thoughtful, his mustache twitching. Could it be, as the rumors say, that the chief consort is injured and cannot perform? The words were awkward and abrupt. What? He calls himself the greatest mind in the realm. Why would he believe gossip? More importantly, is this something I can discuss with him? Worst of all was the sudden silence. One old, one young. We stared at each other, both red-faced. Silence said more than words. My silence became an admission. After a long, painfully awkward pause, the Grand Tutor spoke with difficulty. If that's the case, then Adrian Lin is even less acceptable. Why? He's pale all day long, and he coughs at the slightest breeze. He looks unhealthy. He probably can't fulfill an imperial consort's duties either. That was so blunt I had nothing to say. Gabriel Shu would probably die of anger. He'd sacrificed that much, and this was the result. The Grand Tutor's words weren't without reason. Ever since Alexander Shen took that poison and became Adrian Lin, he really did suffer some after effects. But only on the surface. In the bedchamber, he was no worse than before. Don't ask how I know. Just know that yesterday I paid him a private visit and confirmed it myself. I'd gone to check on him, because he hadn't attended court for several days. I'd heard that once winter set in, the weather turned cold and he'd caught a bit of a chill. So I disguised myself as a eunuch delivering an imperial decree and brought him some tonics. When I arrived, he was about to take his medicine. The moment he saw it was me, he waved everyone out and lounged back against the bed. Those long, narrow phoenix eyes swept over me. His voice was languid. "You're here." I nodded, feeling a little guilty. He used to be so full of energy. "You're taking medicine? Are you really sick?" This was the first time we'd met in private since he'd come back from the dead. Before that, Gabriel Sue wouldn't allow it. He said that if everyone was going to accept his new identity without suspicion, then Adrian Lin had to enter the capital city cleanly, as if he'd truly arrived from somewhere else. Now he wore a snow-white inner robe, his black hair loose. He was much thinner, and his brows and eyes looked sharper, almost austere. In court, I'd been too far away, and with his official robes hanging so loosely, I hadn't realized how much he'd changed. "No, I'm not drinking it." He cut through my thoughts, smiled, and said, "Victoria, I want you to feed me." His voice dipped low. For no reason at all, it sounded beautiful, almost petulant. I stared at him. In the past, he'd never softened in front of me. "What? Am I not worth it?" His tone turned icy. Oh no, he was angry. I snatched up the bowl and brought it to his lips, spooning it into his mouth one swallow at a time. He drank in small sips. His Adam's apple moved with each one. His lean chest rose and fell faintly. I could almost make out his ribs beneath his skin. Even his waist had narrowed. He asked, "Why aren't you talking?" I forced back tears. "Why have you gotten so thin, and now your health is worse? Was it because you took the poison I gave you?" Before I could finish, he kissed me. The fire dragon in the bedchamber burned fiercely, the heat beating sweat on my forehead. Now he had me trapped in his arms so I couldn't move. I felt even hotter, and I could only let him tug my outer robe off. This wasn't right. I'd come to visit a sick man, hadn't I? When I saw he was about to untie my undergarment, I snapped back to myself and tried to pull my inner robe closed. He pinned my hands down. At my ear, he whispered, "Whether I'm healthy or not, why don't you try and see?" Trying was fine. I wanted to, too. I just hadn't expected that once we started trying, it would last for hours, nearly making me late returning to the palace. Before I left, he leaned against the bed, his face calm, his breathing steady, and asked, "So am I capable or not? Do you have your answer now, Victoria?" I do. I nodded again and again, then stumbled out the door clutching my aching waist. The answer was that he hadn't changed at all. But I, drained by state affairs, could barely endure it, and I couldn't exactly say that to the Grand Tutor either. So it was another dead end. In the end, the Grand Tutor concluded, "Your Majesty." No, I couldn't let him start with that. "Emperor, this matter of taking a new imperial husband should be left to me. I guarantee I'll find you a young nobleman with virtue, talent, health, beauty, and skill." Seeing he was about to leave, I thought of Gabriel Shu, still waiting for my good news. I steeled myself, shut my eyes, and shouted to stop him. "Grand Tutor, why not summon the top scholar into the palace first? Once I'm pregnant, I'll grant him a title." The Grand Tutor froze. We can do a trial marriage first. If it doesn't work, you can find some fault and send him back." The Grand Tutor was so furious he fainted. Even as he collapsed, his hand still pointed at me, cursing, "Immoral, utterly immoral." I hurriedly summoned the imperial physician. After a frantic scramble, his condition finally stabilized, and I had people carry him back. When I looked up again, the moon was already caught on the tips of the willows. Thinking of how Gabriel Shu waited in Lingyan Palace every day to have dinner with me, I didn't even care that my stomach was growling. I hurried to the inner palace. Sure enough, the dishes had been reheated several times. Even the bird's nest soup had turned into a sticky lump. Gabriel Shu wore a sky-blue robe and sat there with a cold face. He did not look easy to appease. I had my personal maid prepare the pastries he liked best. Then I dismissed everyone, slipped off my outer robe, and hugged him from behind. "Something happened with the Grand Tutor. I kept you waiting." "What happened to the Grand Tutor?" he asked coolly. "I made him angry," I said weakly. "What did you say?" Wait, that was the kind of question that could get me killed. He pried my hands away, pulled me in front of him, and smiled. "Hard to say? Then I'll say it for you. You told the Grand Tutor I have a hidden ailment, and that you wanted to summon the top scholar into the palace for a trial marriage. In other words," he said, leaning closer, "you said I can't do it." My scalp went numb. I tried to back away, but he held me fast. Warm breath brushed my neck. "Emperor, you can't just go around saying a man can't do it." I didn't. He kissed me, forceful and domineering. Like a fish starved of air, I clung to his solid chest. That was just a rumor. Others can say it, you can't. He began untying my belt. Because whether I can or not, you know best. My outer robe slid to the floor. With one arm he lifted me. As he carried me to the bed, he reached up and loosened his own robe, revealing a lean waist and perfect lines of muscle. He looked like he meant to prove something. I was excited and afraid at the same time. My waist still ached. Well, can we wait a little? Wait for what? He set me down and met my gaze. Candlelight traced his handsome features. I couldn't help thinking. The first person to call him the jade-faced general truly had an exceptional eye. Flowers under moonlight, beauty under lamplight. This moment was exactly that. As for your private visit to my brother's residence yesterday, he already sent me a letter. His lips curved. He told me to serve you well. So that was it. Emperor, focus. The beauty looked displeased. This is our wedding night. He tipped my face up and pressed a deep kiss to my lips. I am a female emperor. The newly enthroned female emperor of the Yuzhou dynasty. In my imagination, I was supposed to have a whole harem. Everyone would indulge in endless pleasure. In reality, even taking 2 imperial husbands felt like too much. It was all because state affairs were too heavy. They wrung me dry. So after I consummated the marriage with consort Chen Gabriel, I couldn't attend court the next day. Fortunately, the grand tutor didn't come either. The officials were all hoping for a little prince, so they were quite tolerant of me. On the 3rd day, I still couldn't attend court. A letter came from the grand tutor. He said he had already chosen an imperial husband for me. The new top scholar, Edmund Lin, looked quite good. He told me not to be sad, and to hurry up, spruce myself up, and bring him into the palace. He was old and should retire. He wouldn't attend the wedding ceremony for the new imperial husband, but he had personally drafted a title for Edmund Lin for my reference. Following the grand tutor's wishes, I issued an edict and granted Edmund Lin the title of consort Hua. The Imperial Astronomical Bureau began selecting an auspicious date. Gabriel insisted on overseeing the wedding preparations himself. He was busy from morning to night and rarely seen. With nothing to do, I could only spend day after day reviewing memorials. About a month later, Edmund Lin finally entered the palace. Gabriel looked even more nervous than I was, warning me about this and that. I strongly suspected Edmund Lin had kept from him the astonishing prowess he showed when he slept with me at the top scholar's residence. Watching Gabriel act as though he feared I'd wear his elder brother out, I said, "Why don't you take my place for the wedding night?" Who knew my words would come true? That day really did turn into a 3-person wedding night. Because the moment I entered the bridal chamber, I smelled the rich, greasy aroma of meat and wine on the table and started vomiting, and it wouldn't stop. In the end, I vomited until Gabriel and Edmund Lin had to support me from left and right, while a spittoon sat in front of me and I retched into it. The imperial physician arrived. Then the imperial physician left. Everyone in the palace looked delighted. Not because I'd taken a new imperial husband, but because I was pregnant. According to the most senior physician Shu, this pregnancy was very likely twins. Yes, that's right. My harem, my indulgence, my pleasures, before any of it even began, it was already over. What awaited me was a long road of pregnancy. Enough. I'm gonna throw up again.